And hello world, it's Lee Kelson coming to you from the balcony in Maroochydore of the head office of Preventum, and I'm here with the co-founder Steve Huff. How are you, Steve?
Good, mate. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. Bit overcast today, but we've got an amazing view. Not a bad pad to be operating your business out of.
It's a good spot. It's a great spot to work out of. We love it.
So, Steve, you've got an interesting background. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you arrived on the Sunshine Coast.
Well, I moved to the coast almost 20 years ago now, and my first startup was 2001 here on the coast, and we were the first company out of the Innovation Center in a company called Typify, which I think won some more awards recently here in Australia as well.
I just interviewed Typify.
Ben.
I've forgotten.
Yeah,
The marketing manager.
Yeah. So, but that was my first startup, and then from there I've probably had another 10 or 11 here out of the coast. And we were talking earlier how you were proficient at taking companies public. My model was more going to the U.S. market and then looking at an M&A. So it's been a really interesting run. Did some investing along the way, and always had a focus on social entrepreneurship. So really had some companies here out of the coast that focused on everything from parenting to solar lighting to what we're doing now with the opioid crisis in America.
I don't know whether I said I was proficient, but I said I had a crack at a few of them.
Yeah, there you go. Sounds good.
So whereabouts in the States are you originally from?
Originally from North Carolina,
Right.
which is kind of between Washington, D.C. and Atlanta, Georgia. And I was from up in the mountains in a little town called Asheville, which is actually the craft beer capital of America now. So
Right, okay.
good spot to be from.
And so did you went to uni over there? And,
I majored in history at my uni or my college. Did a 4-year degree, and then did a master's in business and organization development from the University of Western North Carolina.
Right,
So-
okay, cool. And so Preventum, tell us about Preventum.
Well, Preventum came out of a really practical idea. It was really an interesting way that it came about. We heard a guy from Facebook speak a couple of years ago. He came to the coast, and he was talking about these concepts like big data and gamification, artificial intelligence, and how you could use a platform and use those techniques like Facebook does to keep people engaged. And we were listening to all of this, and then one of the people who was with us afterwards, we took this guy out to dinner, and we're talking to him, and it was my partner, Jackie, who's just started her PhD in childhood injury prevention and public health from University of Queensland. And she asked the question, could you use those same principles of gamification to prevent childhood injuries? And we thought, sure we can.
Right.
We're entrepreneurs, right? We can do anything. And of course, she went on to explain that public health is a real challenge, particularly in prevention, and it's hard to change people's behavior, and ultimately that's what you're trying to do. So we took her up on the challenge. We partnered with the University of Queensland and worked into her study, a single-blinded randomized control trial, to test gamification and its efficacy in injury prevention. And we did a study on childhood burns here in Australia, went all over Queensland, and it was really interesting. And we used an app, and as mothers learned about preventing childhood burns, they were able to earn points and rewards. So we used gamification in a public health context. And it was a world first study. It's now been written up. I think there's about 7 different peer-reviewed articles exploring all aspects of it, which is great. And from there, we went over to the States and started talking to state governments. We did a MOU with the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta, signed an MOU with Johns Hopkins School of Public Health in Baltimore. And we just had this amazing experience where everywhere we went, they said, you guys are doing something that no one's doing. You guys are actually able to engage millions of people, but individualize that engagement. So we started calling on state governments and said, look, we have this platform to do public health campaigns and engage your populations on obesity or violence against women or smoking cessation or whatever your public health issue is. Right. And so we started meeting with a number of commissioners for health in different states, and I think we were in Alabama about 1.5 years ago. And the health commissioner there said, guys, the only thing that we can focus on is the opioid crisis. Okay. Come in back when you have something that will work for that.
Right.
And of course, the opioid crisis is unlike any public health crisis Americans ever faced. So currently, it's estimated that about 175, 180 people a day are dying of accidental overdose from opioids, which means that's the equivalent for the American population, who, when they fought the Vietnam War, they lost 55,000 soldiers. So for America, it's like losing a Vietnam War every year just to drugs and to overdose. So we started working on that, and then in December, we got a call from a music producer out of California, a man named Kevin Lyman, who started a music tour called the Vans Warped Tour. And this is the longest running music festival in American history. It's a punk alternative festival, so bands like Green Day and Blink-182 and Katy Perry, Gwen Stefani all got their start on the Warped Tour. And so he said, look, my friends and family are dying. You know, he was friends with Tom Petty. He knew Prince. And he knew that these people had died of accidental overdoses, and not to mention the thousands and thousands of kids that he connected with every summer who were dying. And so he asked if we could do something. So we did. We created a brand new type of public health campaign called FEND, which you'll see my hat. Okay. Which stands for Full Energy, No Drugs.
Oh, cool.
And we have a nonprofit in the U.S. that is working with state governments now to roll out FEND. We have our first 2 states who've come on board, Utah and Virginia, and that's very exciting. And then our plan is to roll it out across the 50 states. So our little software company here has created the tech for that, owns all the IP, and will license that technology to these state governments as it rolls out. And then we'll be able to roll out this incredible campaign. So that's essentially what Preventum is. It's about individualizing engagement. I know this is a huge story. I didn't know if you wanted my origin story.
Fantastic. No, I loved it. It's great.
But that's how we got started, and that's where we came to where we are today. And we already have some great revenue coming in, and we're in the middle of, or we just kicked off a new Series A fundraising round, 15 million US. We successfully completed a seed round here on the Sunshine Coast at 250,000, and then completed an angel round of 2 million US, and we're now on to our Series A, which is really exciting for us because we have a team in California, we have a team in New York, and we're just about to hit those institutional investors. So we've got great investors here on the coast, and have been supporting us. Also out of New Zealand and Bermuda and the U.S. is where our investors come from.
Fantastic. And you've done all this just from the Sunshine Coast?
Yeah, not just this location. We've had a couple other units over the years. We like to hang out and have a great view, and it's really a good spot to work.
Yeah, so we were just talking about that, the typical commercial offices, you know, they can be a bit sterile and a bit staged,
absolutely.
but this is actually a residential apartment, or
it's a unit that we have, and it's great, and
it's a pad.
It's a pad. Yeah. You know, we're in the penthouse suite, and we've got a little pool upstairs and a sauna, and we have a wine cellar, and it's a good spot to be.
Fantastic. And so tell me, to wrap up, living on the Sunshine Coast and operating, how do you find that?
Well, we love it. I mean, we wouldn't live anywhere else. This is the place we love to live. And as you know, with the technology that we've seen over the last 20 years, it's so easy to work and live anywhere, but we choose to be here. I travel to the States 1 week a month. For a week or 2 weeks, and every time I land in Brisbane Airport and I drive up, and as soon as I get on the coast, I start to relax, and it's just like it melts away, and this is the place to live. Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. And so, just tell me about FEND. You know, obviously the opioid crisis isn't just in the US. There's a problem here in Australia as well.
No, it's actually really pretty scary right now what's happening in Australia. I think we had over 800 deaths last year to opioids, and that doubled between the year before last and last year. And if the trends continue, we're going to lose more and more people to accidental overdose. And so our job is in prevention. We know that out of the U.S. and the crisis there, that for every dollar we spend in prevention, we save between $18 and $24 in the healthcare costs just by doing prevention. So we want to, we're starting to talk to some folks here in Australia, and hopefully catch up with some folks here in Queensland and say, look, this is not only, and of course the beauty of FIND is that we can also combine other drugs such as ice or some of the shadow epidemics for teens like Adderall and Ritalin and some of those things.
Yeah.
So we can really have a drug education campaign unlike anything that's ever existed.
Keep moving out of my frame.
Sorry, man.
Steve. Fen, check it out.
Yeah.
You got a website, Full Energy No Drugs. I love it.
Yeah, check out the FIND app on the App Store, but www.preventum.com.
Steve, been a pleasure, mate. That was a fantastic story,
awesome.
and all the best with Preventum.
Thanks
and
so much.
Hope you get your 15 million round away.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cheers,
absolutely.
mate.
Cheers.
Well
Take
done.
care.